Welcome to the Eventful Podcast, where real conversations meet big ideas.
This is where the real journey gets shared.
It's honest,
It's inspiring.
and it's always eventful.
So, welcome to the Eventful Podcast. I'm super excited about this guest speaker that we have. Just to give a little background, I've actually known this person since before I can remember. I believe I was 9 months old when I met Joni, also known as Joan Bluestone Landorf, who is an amazing female entrepreneur, but also my second mother, I would say. So I'd love to turn it over to Joni right now just to give a quick bio of herself.
So I think the most important thing is that I have known you since you were basically an infant, and you were my daughter's closest friend, and we lived in the same development together. And from very early on, both you and your sister Jess worked for me in my company, Corporate Visions. So I feel like you've been involved and you've seen me start this business from the very beginning. But the quick bio is I have a background in packaged goods marketing. I worked for Clairol for 7 or 8 years. And then I had my daughter and had to figure out a way that I could spend time with her and still make money. And that's what drove me to start my business. And the first business was called Gourmet USA, that nobody even knows about, which was a gourmet food basket company. And then that evolved into Corporate Visions, which was a promotional company. And after running that for over 10 years, I merged that with Access Promotions, which was a large creative strategy promotion agency in New York City. And then about 5 years ago, my partner and I sold it to Halo Branded Solutions, which is the largest promotional company in the US. And at that point, I stayed on for 3 years to transition my team. And then when I knew that they were all set, I decided it was time for me to move on to my next journey, which is leadership coaching and mentoring, which I've been doing pretty much through my whole career too.
So that's a really impressive career journey and successful exit, which is so admirable. So I want you to take us back to the beginning of how your career started. You're obviously a mother, and which I know Meredith is good friends with your children, and we'll get into that later about balancing motherhood and career and all the things that women have to do. I want to hear how all of this started and sort of how you got on the path that has led you to where you are now.
Oh, okay. So just to even go back, and I rarely go back this far because I think it seems like it feels ancient, but since we've gone back to when I was raising babies, I don't think I can go any further back. I started my career as a special education teacher. I had a master's degree in special ed, and I ran a learning center outside of Boston. And I loved that job, but I was in my mid-20s, and to be honest, everyone was telling me not to work so hard. So that was sort of a theme in my life. And I thought, I'm just starting my career. What do you mean? Isn't this how you're supposed to work hard? And at the time, I thought, all right, I'm living in one suburb. I'm teaching in another suburb. I'd just broken up with someone that I was with. What am I going to do? So I had a brother who went to law school and a brother who went to business school and a sister-in-law who went to business school. And they said, why don't you go to business school or law school? And I thought, I don't really see myself in a law library. I just didn't see that, but I didn't really know what business was. But I thought from education, I would be able to sort of transition into public policy or some kind of administrative work. So literally, I applied to business schools. And then I applied to schools in Boston and in New York, and I got in both. And I had a friend at the time who had just graduated from law school, and he said, Joni, go to New York. Get yourself into a New York business school where you're going to be around men and women. You've had all these female careers. I think that's what you should do. So I moved to New York. I moved here, and I thought that I would be here for 2 years to get my MBA, and then I would leave. I sort of liked New York. I thought it was a nice place to visit, but I didn't really want to live there. Well, what happened was in between my first and second year of business school, I got this opportunity. I was at NYU to do an internship at Clairol. And Clairol in those days was a sort of very innovative marketing beauty company. And I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And, they treated me well, and I learned all of these new things, and I was around new people. So then when it was time to apply to schools for jobs after I graduated the next year, I interviewed all over the country, and I was really going to go to Minneapolis or Chicago because those were the classic marketing companies. And I thought, well, what if I don't like it? Now I'm stuck in Minneapolis or stuck somewhere, and now I'm close to 30. I'm still, trying to figure out my life. And so I decided to go back to Clairol. And it was really, I don't know what the other decisions would have been, but it was great. And I went to work for Clairol. And again, I loved it. I love marketing. I love being in the beauty industry. I love the intangibles of image and beauty and understanding. And so I did that for the next 5 to 7 years. In the interim, I met my husband, I got married, and I had my first child, Allie, Meredith's good friend. And I thought, oh man, all I did that first year was work. I would go to work, I would cut my hours. Instead of staying till 7 or 8 at night, I would leave at 5:30. I would take the train to Westchester. I would keep Allie up until 10:25. She'd go to bed at 10:25. I'd go to bed at 10:30, and I'd do the same thing the next day. So I pretty much had no life. And my husband said to me, you got to get a grip. So that's what drove me to start my own business. So one of the questions that people ask me all the time is, what's it like to be a woman entrepreneur? And I often say that for me, I wasn't a burning entrepreneur. I just knew that I needed to work. I wanted to work. I needed to make money. And I also wanted to spend time with my daughter and my husband and sort of have some flexibility, and then subsequently my son. So that's what really drove me. And in those early years, I had a friend from business school, and she and I started the business together. I really loved being at Clairol, but she didn't like her job. So she'd come to me every 6 months with another job idea. And finally, she said one day, do you want to have like a corporate gift basket business? And I thought, I don't know, like what's that? Because keep in mind, this was before there was Balducci's and before there was, Fairway doing everything. Like people didn't have fancy baskets. So we created this concept. I mean, literally, it was so long ago that she would go to the library to find food products from around the country. And so we would have pralines from South Carolina and lobster from Maine and, steaks from Kansas City. And the concept was that we would put together these fancy gift baskets. We would add calligraphy cards, and then the supplier or the manufacturer would have to drop ship them from wherever they were to our clients. And we thought this was so specialized that we could charge above retail, which we did. And so in that first season, I remember we did $75,000 in our first 2 months, and we thought we were millionaires. We thought we had
That was
literally
a lot of money back then.
oh my God, we could, right? We could. And by the way, Mayor, Jess was helping writing the cards. Like we were literally in my basement, and her sister trying to figure everything out. And unfortunately, that was like in December, and in January we had no business
Yeah.
because it was a gourmet food gift holiday business. And so then we started to say, okay, maybe we'll shift to high-end crystal or leather goods or, whatever it was, but it had to be very high end. And you know where I'm going because we didn't end up there. So we did that for like the next year or so. And then we had this portfolio of products. And I remember I used to like go into client meetings and I would like open this portfolio of food products and, high-end gift items. And I thought, I'm going to lose my mind. I said, I did not go to business school. I did not get my degree in marketing to be having this portfolio of products that I'm selling. And so I was on the phone with a good friend of mine who I'd worked with at Clairol, and he'd gone on to Colgate. And I remember saying to him, Doug, if I am such a hotshot marketer, why can't I do that with my own business? And honestly, it was like the light bulb went off or went on, whatever the expression is. And I shifted the business from selling products to really uncovering ideas. Now everybody talks about this. In those days, nobody did. Because what we did is we asked questions. We, instead of going in there with products that we were selling, we went in there to discuss what were their objectives, what's their strategy, who's their target audience, what were the problems they were trying to uncover. And all of a sudden, the business shifted from this sort of product-focused business to a strategic marketing promotional company where we were figuring out what clients want. And then, honestly, whatever it is they wanted, we had the whole supplier side that we were developing. So we would work with designers to create it. We would source either domestically or overseas. And that's really how we built the business. And then from that point on, it moved into Corporate Visions, which was really this promotional strategy company. And from Corporate Visions, I love that company, and it was women owned. And, we can talk more about that because that was really where the real growth came from me. But 10 years into that, I knew that I needed deeper pockets because I was doing really large jobs and a lot of them were overseas. And I knew also that I wanted the company to be bigger. And when you're growing a company, if it's you and the people that are doing your work and not out there building it as well, it can't grow as much. And that's when I merged my business with Access Promotions. And that was a great run for the next 10 years. And my partner, Larry Cohen, and I really built this sort of fun business with lots of good people that were out selling and developing products. And we pretty much took the same strategy that I had started as Corporate Visions and grew Access. And we were known for our creativity, or our tagline of being 180 degrees from ordinary. And so we were consistent to that message. And then, after that, Larry and I sold the business to Halo, which, we've talked, Meredith, you and I have talked about that when you're growing and building a business, your ultimate goal is to be able to sell it. And so that's what we did.
Meredith and I are obviously so much earlier into our business journey, but that's kind of how we started our business. There's some similarities there, Mara, about the baskets, and obviously we didn't intend to do that in the beginning, but that's where we pivoted and then pivoted back. And I do want to ask you about pivots, Joni, but what year was that when you started and when you started putting the gift baskets together? When was that? Was it 80s, 90s?
It was in the 80s. So it was around,
Yeah.
just nuts, right? So Meredith was born in 1986. Okay. For all of those who want to know that, along with Allie. And that's what drove me. So that was sort of the burning point. And I still went back to Clairol for the next year full time. So around 87, 88, 89 was really when, I was getting this business off the ground. Now, an interesting thing, I was still working at Clairol part-time. I had gone into the president of the company and I said, look, I love my job and, I love my daughter and I need to figure out how to do something part-time. And he said to me, really, we couldn't have people running a brand part-time. Well, obviously we know that today, you could, but, women weren't working part-time. And I said to him, well, I do think you can, but I worked on a special test market project for them. And so I said, how about if I run that? And I had already cleared it with all the people and all of the support groups. So I had a lot of internal support. But the real issue was I was really working on two jobs. So I would go into Clairol and the people would say to me, oh, the lady of leisure's here. And I would think, you should only know. I'll never forget that term. And then my husband at home would say to me, what's wrong with you? You have the greatest part-time job in the world. Why are you working on getting this other business off the ground? Because what I wasn't working less hours. I just had flexibility. So I could still take Allie to Gymboree and I could still hang out. But, I honestly had full-time help. I couldn't have done it otherwise. But to me, I just didn't have to answer to, clocking in, leaving at 7:30 in the morning and coming back at 7 o'clock at night. So that flexibility, though, allowed me to run this. And I remember saying to Andy, my husband, I don't know how long this part-time job is going to last. And sure enough, after 3 years, I was pregnant with my son. And I remember Working Women was doing this article on women that had gone from teaching to business, and they were featuring me in the article. So here I am at Clairol. They're taking pictures in the Clairol product display room with all the shampoo and hair color behind me. I'm pregnant, so I'm like nauseous. And I know I'm about to lose my job because they've brought this woman in over me, and she didn't like the idea that I was working part-time. Now, what they said is, come back full-time, just come back full-time. But once I'd gotten a taste of being on my own, so now this is like, late 80s, or I thought, I can't.
On the podcast series, we always somehow get into motherhood, running a business, what that looks like, the flexibility, but also the extra added pressure and priorities and things that come along with that. So it's really interesting to hear how that impacted you, but also how it led you. It kind of honed your path to where you needed to be and where you are now.
What I often tell people that I mentor is, in my good days, I felt like I was pretty decent at work and, and a pretty decent mom. In my bad days, I felt like I was terrible at work. I couldn't get anything done and I was a terrible mother. So, I think that what I say is the absolutes are not true. So for all of us, we're just trying to get through the
Mhm.
day, and you can't do everything well all the time. What you can do is certain things well at certain times, and then you have priorities. When I think about your business, and I love meeting both of you and talking about, how you're growing your business. So believe me, I have so many questions even for you. But I think what separates you from a lot of people that do what you do, I mean, besides your talent
Mhm.
and creativity, is that you sat on the side of the client. You were on that side, so you know the struggles, you know the frustrations. And I think the fact that I worked internally for the client side gave me such a sensitivity and an empathy and an understanding, because it's not like clients are trying to be difficult. They just don't get it. They've got so many things that are on their place, and our
Mhm.
stuff, whether it's events or promotional products or things, we're an afterthought. We are not the day-to-day state. But when our stuff doesn't go well, it really messes them all up, and particularly on your end. So it has to go really, really well, but they don't often realize that until it's a little too late. And that's why they need people like you that understand their side and then can really figure out what the client needs so that you can direct them.
Another point on that is that I think our businesses are similar. Of course, it's both marketing based and client services based and all of that. However, to your point, Joan, we always tell our clients it's our job to make them look good, right? We're not coming to, we support a lot of events teams. We act as a lot of our clients, their entire events teams, because they don't have anything internally. And that goes for larger companies too. Sometimes they just don't have an events team. And some of the smaller clients do have events teams that we support. It really runs the gamut how the companies are structured. But our job is really just to make you look good. And it sounds like with you building your business and the industry that you were in, that was your job as well. And to your point earlier, when things don't go well in events, they really don't go well. So our job is to make them go really, really well, because if there are mistakes, then it shows. And the same thing with promotional products. Like we've worked with, different companies, especially when Meredith and I worked in-house, not naming any names, but things would arrive and in time for the big event the next day, and it was not the right thing. And some of our clients who don't use our swag services also have that problem sometimes. And it's similar in that there is a deadline. A lot of people are going to be seeing what's produced, whether it's products or an experience or whatever it is. And the pressure is actually on the client, right? Because the executives, they don't really, most of the time, they don't really see what's going on the marketing side, right? We're just there to sort of bolster them and support them and make sure that they're able to get everything done that they want to get done in a quality way. But the eyes are on the client, right? They're not always on prospect. I'm sure they weren't always on Axis.
And in fact, the reason I've been smiling through this whole thing is, Larry and I think in our mission, when we did all of our branding, it was, our job is to make you look good. It's like, and people say that now, but it is so true. And, as you're talking, my mind is going to stories of where clients have been embarrassed in a
Mhm.
situation, whether it was our fault or not. And it's horrible for them because they are getting evaluated on it. And you're right, you're not the one who's right there. I mean, sometimes you are with the event, but you're not answering. So it's so important for us to make sure that we do good work so that our clients look good.
Whoever is on the, let's say, the last point of that journey of the marketing experience, whether it's products or whether it's events, the guest or the recipient, they're the ones receiving it, right? So they're receiving the experience, they're receiving the item or product, and it really falls on the company when something goes wrong, right? So it's like no pressure for our team, no pressure for your team. you know?
And
Just kidding. It's the most pressure, but
Right.
it's the
And
pressure
you
to make
feel it.
our client contact look good, the marketing or customer team or whatever team we're working with on that project look good, and overall to make the brand and the experience that they're coordinating and that they're providing for all of these people who are unattached to them in a corporate way, representing them well. So it's people tell us that we work really well under pressure, and sometimes we're not saving lives, right? But sometimes it's like I wonder actually what my heart rate is during a big event. I don't know.
It's way high up. And honestly, we all tell ourselves that, okay, we're not curing cancer here, this is not life and death. But you know what? To your client at that moment, it is really important. What I often say is they can't even anticipate what it is that could go wrong. Another thing that I just wanted to say, and
So
maybe
true.
it's different now because people are more appreciative, but when I was building the business, no one ever called you to thank you when things went well. They always called you when things didn't go well. And people on my team used to get frustrated, like, why don't they appreciate us? And I would say, do you see how they're calling again for the next project? That means they appreciate us. And
Yeah.
so, and that's all I cared. To me, it wasn't about me. It was really about them. And I think that came
Mhm.
through. And, maybe it sounds a little, I don't know, strange, but and my clients, some of them have become very, very dear, close friends over the years because they've been clients for so long. But one of the things, certainly in the business situation, that I never lost sight of the fact that they were the client and I was the vendor. And I know it's not that I was in a less than position. It's just that they needed someone that they could turn to and trust. This wasn't the time for me to be airing all the stuff. I had to be human, so I didn't want them, they knew, but I would always try and shift it so that it was more about them.
That's something I've
So,
had to
so
work
when my
on.
clients listen to this, are you unsincere? No.
Well, no, just to go back, it was kind of resonating about in our industry, like it's the same. If things keep going right, you don't always get a pat on the back, but they book you for another event or they're going to do another project with you. So it's like you get used to the fact that like maybe they're not going to say, "Oh my God, you did such an amazing job," and it's not even my expectation, but you get more work with them
I mean, it's
because
great
they
if you get
trust you.
both. It's great if they tell you, like when we would get the notes that would say, "Oh my God, this was unbelievable." Like I used to have them all plastered on my, bulletin board and everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think the fact that you're doing well and every year you get more and more business and you get referrals, that's proof.
Yeah, we tell our team no
Yes.
news is good news, right? Like if you haven't heard anything, then everything's
Uh,
great. So
that it is
I'll
so
take
true.
silence. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure it just again because we're in this first season of our podcast, we're interviewing so many different women, business owners, executives, mothers. They have so much going on, just sort of creators and leaders in different spaces. But because our business is so similar-ish, marketing based at least, to what you've done, I know Meredith has always looked up to you. And Joni, I know we're interviewing you. However, I want to hear from Meredith maybe one or two things that you've taken along with you in this journey that we've been on running and growing our business that maybe Joni influenced you with over the years, or maybe when you were younger, you saw something in her, heard something from her that you've taken with you.
I mean, where do I
Oh,
begin? But as you mentioned, so my very first job was filing cabinets at Corporate Visions. And this is back in the day where you'd have catalogs from every single vendor with ASA
ASI,
numbers. Am I saying it right?
ASI numbers.
ASI numbers. So it's like if you wanted a pen, then I would have to categorize all the pens. So I came, and Joni knows a lot about my background, and Jess obviously knows me well. But we spoke a little bit about it in the first podcast, just introducing. I come from a single mother. We struggled financially growing up, and so I always knew that I wanted to be financially stable. So having a business at some point was big to me. So I always admire Joan just in that regard. And I think this is also not to age ourselves, but this is a time when like there were not a lot of female entrepreneurs. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted to be self-sufficient. So I think just seeing someone like her that was also a wonderful mother, but also having a business, and I so much admired that. So I don't know if there's a specific thing in that, but what I love about Joan is she doesn't stop. Like she is technically retired, but she doesn't let her mind stop. So you're now doing something else. I don't ever see you stopping to do anything, and you're always wanting to learn about something else. Like the fact that you're now a coach is so admirable to me. Like you could easily just throw in the towel, but I know that was a big thing for you and to even retire and take a step back. I mean, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I always admire women in particular that do that, and they kind of don't let I don't want to call people out, because I
Everyone
think
is on
that
their own path.
it's also wonderful everyone does their own path, and it doesn't come from a place of judgment. I think also being a full-time mom is extremely admirable too. But just for me, that's the path kind of that I wanted to take. And I know I always think of you in my mind when I started my
So
business.
what I
So
want to add to
I
that
don't know.
is Meredith has a very strong mother. And yes, she was a single mom, and she also was incredibly resilient. And she kept reinventing herself because she knew she had these two kids that she had to support. And she just put her blinders on and went forward. And so while we lived in the same development and I was growing this other business, we were close, and I got to observe Suzanne firsthand. And I think it's really remarkable. And, then she built her own career, and then she traveled around the country and in different places, and now the world. So I think you've had strong role models, and, and your sister as well, of knowing that it's important to build and take care of yourself. And I'm honored to be one of those people. So thanks.
Yes, I'll give
Oh,
my mom did okay too, but I talk about her in the first podcast. Don't worry,
Don't
Suzanne,
worry,
you're
Suzanne. I got
mentioned.
you. I got your back.
But just seeing, and my mom was close with Joni too. Just seeing strong women in general, I think, was just something that I admired. And to my mom as well, like, she brought herself back to school to have a career change. So it's something that I've been exposed to for a long time, and that's kind of what has been an influence in my life.
And just to add on to that, I think what I'm hearing talking to you and everything, and both of you, is that it's not like you grow up and go to college and get one job and career and that's it. It evolves. And I think you're proof of that. You probably had no idea when you met, when you were working on the corporate side, that you were going to become event planners. And as you build this company, even doing this podcast or adding on, like, you're constantly adding and evolving. And I think that that's what keeps you going. It's certainly what kept me going. Just the general curiosity and willingness and openness to change.
absolutely. And I think that I was actually talking to my mom about this past weekend, but you have an idea of something, right? And I personally believe you're not given an idea or something that's pulling you in a certain direction for no reason, right? If you keep having the same thought over and over and over again about what you should be doing or what you might be inspired to do, there's a reason for that. And you should probably follow your gut and your intuition and whatever powers that be. You should probably follow that and pursue it and see what happens. But I know it was so wonderful to hear about the evolution, that even though you told us briefly, but the evolution of your company and your trajectory over the years, because just even talking about working internally at a company, I don't think we could have ever, I mean, even just where we are now in our lives personally, we could have never imagined the success, but also the fun, the growth, the learning. I mean, everything that comes with this, right? It's I keep saying the word journey, but that's really what it is. Like, there are so many highs and lows. And I think everybody, family, friends, whoever is external to our lives, they see success, like they see the highlights, right? And even your quick summary of your evolution, it's like the highlights. I built the business, we did great, we sold the company, all these things, and you're leaving out like decades of just roller
And
coasters. Right?
every business owner, every person has highs and lows. And believe me, there are a lot of lows. And there are the days that you think, oh my God, I don't know that I can keep doing this, and what am I going to do? And somehow
Yeah.
you figure it out. What I have is the perspective of all the years, because I've done this. So I've seen when I was panicking and staying up at night and pacing the halls and worrying about projects, that there's always a solution, and I think that, and one
Yes.
of the things that we talked about earlier, when we were prepping for the call, was the idea that it's, what is it that makes us work? What's the culture that we're trying to create? And I think what you're trying to do, and certainly what I tried to do, is that you want people to feel valued, you want people to feel heard, and you want to be able to develop them. I to this point, it's like, yes, there are the things that go wrong, and what I would say about them, and it's something that I was thinking about just even this morning on that note, is this young woman worked for me, and she was junior, and she used to make a lot of mistakes. And so I would always be, okay, it's no worries that we make mistakes, but let's learn from them. So we would do these projects and then we would do debriefings. And one day she coined the name for me, LL Cool J, and it was Lessons Learned Cool Joni. Okay. And when I retired, my partner, who still remembered that, made a sign of LL Cool J for me. Okay. And actually, that's when I'm proud of that, because and he and I used to argue about this, because he would say, why do you want to focus on the things that didn't go well? No one wants to talk about that. And I would say, because we have to learn from what didn't go well. We don't want to ever shame anyone or make them feel bad. And I'm really a believer that you praise in public and you critique in private, because it's, I mean, it's just, you
Absolutely.
never want to shame anyone. Having said that, it's really important when things don't go well to just look and break it down, not to point fingers, but to say, what could have we done differently? How could we have done that? And so I think that that's how you get through all of the things that don't always go your way. And just keep remembering there will be a solution.
And it is true, because events in particular, and the industry that you're in, there's so many outside forces that will cause an issue, like weather on events. We've had issues left and right. Just we had a ceiling literally fall at a venue. And so like we'll always find a solution. But over the years, like I've been more calm about it. However, in my early career, I would have been a basket case. And so as we coach and train our employees, some of them just simply haven't had the years of experience, and we just are like, it's okay. And I can see myself in them a lot of times too. And it's not a bad thing. It's just over time you learn that we'll find a solution.
That's
the ceiling
right.
fell down.
We're
We'll
going to
figure out
rebuild
how
that.
to get.
I used to say, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And I am the most
I've said that
positive,
too.
fatalistic person. Like I always think there's,
Yeah.
my partner would tease me and he would say, you never met a person you didn't like or think you could develop, that, or take a class that was going to make you better, and that's true. That is all true. And it's still that I sort of am preparing myself for, things are going to go wrong and you got to fix them, or you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think I'm perpetually positive, but also a realist, which works really well in what we do. And Meredith, I don't know, we're kind of like we balance each other well,
And
but
someday one of you
the
is
negative one.
she's not the negative one. She's not negative. Talking about, talking to our team and things when something goes wrong and somebody's freaking out about something, right, behind closed doors. To your point, everything is solvable. And from a planning perspective, which in your industry, Joni, it's so much planning, just like with ours, of course. I like to say, expect the best and plan for the worst. Every worst case scenario, anything that could go wrong, we have a solution for that, or we'll make sure it doesn't happen in some way, et cetera, right? And things do go wrong, and that's just part of it. And we talk to our clients about that too. If our clients, which so many of them are not events professionals, they may have some events experience, but it's not what their focus is in their career. And so we chat about that with them before events, saying, we're going to plan everything to a T, and there are still going to be things that happen. And when things happen, we will solve them right away. Like we can't make miracles happen or guarantee perfection, but that's what we strive to do. And we do a pretty good job of it, but we can't foresee everything, of course. And that's just
I
life,
love that. I
so.
mean, one of the things that I can, as you're talking, I'm visualizing myself, pitching with clients, and I would say to them, I just want you to know that I can't promise you that everything is going to go right. But what I can promise you is we're going to figure it out and we're going to fix it before it's too late. And then over the years, I would tweak it to say, we're going to anticipate so that we get it ahead of time. It's just impossible. That's what I would tell my team behind the scenes. I think that we're all human. And I think that clients, the more experience they have, they understand that too. And, it's about how are you solving whatever comes up.
I think also because they hire us for our expertise and you for your expertise in your field, sometimes it's happened where a client has an idea, but they don't understand the ramifications behind it. So it's our job to be like, we can do that. However, XYZ might happen. And they appreciate the fact that we're giving them insight, because they're saying, oh, I actually didn't even think of that could be an issue. So just honesty is
and
good,
the expertise that you bring. You've done many of these. They're doing, one or two. I agree.
So you've also been involved with Girls Inc. Can you share what drew you to the organization and how it connects to your values as a leader?
Of course. I actually love this question. So I was looking for something that I could do because all I did was really work and, I would give money to organizations, but I hadn't gotten involved. So that was sort of in the back of my mind. And then I was riding the train to New York City and I was sitting next to a friend of mine and we were just talking about the weekend and she said she was doing some work for this organization called Girls Inc. And I said, Girls Inc. I said, what's that? And at the time I was running a women-owned company. I was living in Westchester. I was part of the women, We Bank. So I was certified women owned. And I thought I knew everything female oriented and I'd never heard of Girls Inc. And then she said, I don't know. She said, I'm helping a friend of mine who's on the board because they're having this event that's called A Man Is Not a Financial Plan. And I did one of these 180-degree turns and I said, oh, that's an organization I need to learn about. Well, that was over 15 years ago. And I've got to tell you, I know it sounds sort of trite or naive, but I feel like I have gotten way more out of this organization than, I have given to it. Girls Inc. is about inspiring all girls, particularly girls in middle school and high school, to become strong, smart, and bold. And what we do is we work with girls in underserved areas. And so these are girls that want to be just like all of us. They just don't necessarily have the means or the opportunity. So this organization provides it by working with girls in school, after school, and we work on leadership programs. And what I really love about Girls Inc., which ties into sort of my background in building a company, is that it's just not about telling people they're going to be confident. It's giving girls the skills. So they get the financial literacy skills and they get communication skills and advocacy skills so that they learn how to do different things and build confidence. And then they stay in high school, go to college, change the trajectory of their lives and their families. So it's really an amazing organization. And it makes me feel like I am just continuing what I did by mentoring people in my company. And it's another way of helping to empower women and continue to give back.
I love that. It's very inspiring.
Thanks so much for telling us about that. And I'm sure, if we can provide more information for anyone who's listening who would be interested in getting involved as well. And I know Meredith and I would like to be more involved with that. But I just wanted to say we love that phrase and we've definitely heard it before. Fully agree. I think Meredith fully agrees with that phrase, but I really want to take it a step further. Not only is a man not a financial plan, but dependence in general is not a strategy. And Meredith may have more to add to this. I'm not sure whether it's a partner, a paycheck, a client, or even an investor potentially. I think our priority has been to build a life where our own personal financial security doesn't hinge on someone else's decisions. And it's not such a fragile foundation, which we've talked some about this in other episodes, and those may come out in the future. But when we started our business, it of course was not just about making money. It was about building something that could not be taken away from us, something that we owned, that we could grow, and that we could bet on and bet on ourselves to make things happen. So because we never wanted to be in a position where we had to ask for what we wanted or the life that we wanted or the bank account that we wanted, we really wanted to create that for ourselves. And I think that's what we've done with our business. And I'm very proud of that. And I hope that we're an inspiration to other people who would like to do that for themselves as well. So obviously, to go back to the saying, a man is not a financial plan. Yes, fall in love, partner up, be supported by your partner, but also know your own numbers, know your worth, and try to build something that's yours and that can't be taken away from you, because freedom in the end is actually choices, and financial independence, especially as a woman, gives you a lot of options that potentially love alone never will. So we love that saying.
It is called the Eventful Podcast. So tell us an eventful moment in your career.
So,
Sure, you have many.
okay, there've been a lot of really good events, but one of the things that you said to me is something that didn't go right. And this happened very early in my career when I was still running Corporate Visions. And I think it's worth talking about because it was a huge learning experience. I mean, I, I guess I can say that now. So anybody who knows me from those early years, or friends, family, hopefully not too many business people, but they would know the Bears, and even Meredith knows the Bears, the
I know
Bears.
about the Bears.
So the Bears were, I mean, and there's so many levels to the story. So at the time, I was a preferred vendor for Bristol Myers Squibb's division of Clairol because I had worked there, and then I did all their premiums. And one day, this vendor, I had met him, and he was an importer, and he imported really nice things, but he would make custom pieces, and that was a lot of what I was doing. And I didn't trust him. I just had a bad feeling that there was something, I mean, I guess unfiltered. Just I wouldn't go as far to say unethical, but something that didn't feel right to me. And he did not accept that I wouldn't work with him. So he went around me to my clients. He got to them through either a trade show or called them or something. And in those days, clients were very loyal. And so my clients at Clairol said, we can't work with you. You have to call Joan. She'll handle the project. So now he had presented these cool ideas to them. So they thought they were cool. So I thought, being, relatively new, maybe my clients knew more than I knew. Maybe he was an okay guy. And so it took us a year. We worked on two projects. One went totally smoothly, and it was one of my favorite projects, so I will give him that. And the other were these custom teddy bears, and it was for a beauty brand, and these bears were going to be given away in JCPenney. When you would buy the hair care or hair color products, you would get a bear. And it was either a little bear that was like a 3-inch bear that was packed on the product. It was a 12-inch bear that you could then actually buy with the product, or it was a 35, inch huge bear that was the display bear. It was, it was a huge order. It was, hundreds of thousands of bears. And the guy, he pitched it with me. We won the bid. Because they bid everything out when it's, this kind of big job. And we win it, and he does his first samples, and they're beautiful. And he does his second round of samples, and they're beautiful. And now we're going into production. And he said to me, see, you were worried about me, and I told you everything would be fine. So whenever I hear that, there's also, whenever anyone says to me, don't worry, that's like the worst thing you can say to me. Like my skin starts to crawl. So anyway, I was away on vacation with my kids and my husband in Lake Placid. I'll never forget this. There were telephone calls, and I get a phone call, and I have to go to a payphone, and it's from the fulfillment center in Knoxville, Tennessee, telling me that the shipment had come in and some of the bears were wet. Now, I knew enough to know that if there's wet in one area, there's usually wet in other areas. And I've got the importer who's saying to me, you need to release the funds, because everything was done on a letter of credit, because I didn't have enough funds not to do that. And because he had the rest of the delivery. And I said, no, because they're not good. I'm not good. He said, well, if you don't, you're going to miss your promotion. Now, keep in mind, we all have everything they're date driven. So I remember standing at this payphone and thinking, if I don't release the funds, I'm going to mess up the promotion. If I do release the funds and it doesn't go well, I mean, I just couldn't imagine they were all bad. I couldn't. So I'm just trying to think back. I can still see myself there. P.S. I end up releasing the funds. They get all the other goods there, and I fly to Knoxville, Tennessee. I take this other expert with me, and sure enough, there was mold. I couldn't use them. And I didn't have that kind of money, and I was like, I am flipping out. I don't know what to do. I haven't told the client yet because, again, we solve problems. I'm trying to solve the problems. And I remember I was pacing in the halls in my house. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. And my husband was like, a big deal. You think things don't go wrong for people all the time? And, and I'm like, I was just a wreck. And I had to get a lawyer because I was going to have to sue this guy for my money. And I was in my lawyer's office, and I'll never forget, he was in this high rise in White Plains, New York, and I was like a wreck. And he said to me, Joan, get a hold of yourself. This is not the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you. And if I could have jumped out the window, but you know what? He was right. So what happened was, just to tell you, because there is always a solution. And when I used to tell this to clients, I wouldn't give them all this background stuff. I would just talk about them being bad. I ended up going to the Gund Bear Company. Gun makes all those fancy high-end. That's
Love
right.
gun
And
bears. Yeah.
I had gone to
They're
them initially,
gorgeous.
but I couldn't afford them. They were too expensive. And I went to this VP of marketing or sales, whoever, and I literally sat in his office in New York City and begged him to fix this project, to redo the bears. I didn't care what it cost, just to redo them. And he did me a favor. So they ended up, we replaced all the bears with these beautiful gunned bears that didn't have their label because they were, with private label. But we made the date, everything went well at JCPenney. The client never knew, but what happened was I had lost so much money in the process. And here's really where your clients can help you out. I'd gone to the CFO of the company and I said to him, I had to tell him, here's what happened. And he supported me. He loaned me some money to get through this next thing. It really taught me that your clients can be your partners, that they're in this together. He didn't want to see me fail, and he wanted the promotion to go. So it was an incredible learning experience, but I'm consolidating it. This went on for a good 6 months, and then I had to sue him, which was another year and a half. And then he went back to Chapter 11 so that he wouldn't have to pay me. But I got through it and I was able to resolve it. But it absolutely changed me and changed the way I worked, which is if my gut tells me something isn't good, I trust my gut. If I am in a situation, I always inspect everything with my own inspectors, not with somebody else's. So I have, there are inspection agencies that do this. And believe me, I am an expert on mold and mildew and anything that has to do with that. So, and then for years, that was when I was on my own. Then when I joined Access, wherever we moved, whatever office, I always had that 12-inch bear with me just to remind me, don't get too cocky and don't take things for granted. And yet I got through it, and the business grew way more than that. So it was a defining moment and, one that I wouldn't wish on anyone, but I did learn a lot from it and the promotion went well.
I remember those bears.
I could still start to shake when I think.
But you never went, told me, maybe Allie, but I didn't know, I just knew you were stressed about bears, but you didn't let your kids worry about it, which is great. But after you told me the story on our prep call, I was like, wow, you really were stressed about that. I would have been too.
And some things fall apart for better things to fall together. You just never know where something's going to lead you or what's going to come out of a situation that seems super negative.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for being on this podcast with us. I mean, I've of course go way back with you, but I've always admired you as not only almost a second mother to me, but also as a OG female entrepreneur in this space. So once again, I can't thank you enough. And it's been so fun to have this conversation with you.
I'm the one who's honored to have done it with you, and to watch you grow and develop and build this incredible company is really, it's so wonderful and inspiring for me. So I learn from you every day as well. So thank you for doing this, and can't wait to see what's coming up next for you and for Jess.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Eventful Podcast. If you loved this episode, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and catch us on Instagram at the handle @TheEventfulPod. See you next week.